Hello, everyone. This is the Pitcher Nail Down, and I am your host, Russell Clay. I am flying solo today because our buddy Jason Gilbolt is on vacation. He said he's going to be watching and seeing what I have to say, so I do appreciate that. So let's get into this seven gamer. Pretty intriguing slate, I'd say. Not too much to worry about in terms of aces. Some pretty reasonable prices. So I think we're going to be able to get to pay up for some pitching tonight on both slates. So if you're playing the all-dayer, it's a little different. But I think for what we're looking at here, pretty reasonable. So getting into our first matchup here, Ulysse Chassin versus Ivan Nova. Angels versus Yankees. Yankees, obviously, relatively big favorites, 139, minus 139, and Yankees projected for almost 5 runs tonight. So Vegas isn't taking into consideration what Chassin did a few games ago against the Tigers, but I mean, compared to sort of what all the other things he's done this year and sort of all the other factors historically, I think that's probably fair. It is nice to see that he does have 10K strikeout upside, but I don't think that's realistic. And I mean, when you go back and look at his splits, his strikeout percentage just isn't there right now. So I think that game was a blip on the screen, and I do not want to target this Yankees offense right now. So I think we're avoiding him even as a deep tournament play. I wouldn't touch him. Nova, sort of in the same vein. He hasn't really brought much upside this year. He hasn't had a DK score over 19 this year. He has had a few games with 6 strikeouts and 8 strikeouts, but in those games he's allowed 4 and 5 earned runs, allowed 4 earned runs and 3 of the last in each of his last 3 outings. So he's not a weak arm, but at the same time he's going to give up some home runs, and you really don't want to deal with the middle of this lineup for right now for the Angels with Calhoun, Trout, and Pujols. They've been kind of getting to you. And even superstar Gregorio Pettit, I mean, he even hit a homer last night. So you got to start to watch out for that whole Angels lineup. They're coming around as the season progresses. And I think these two are both off limits for me, even in deep tournaments. So that's what we're looking at there. Next one here. Tyler Wilson versus Marcus Stroman. Blue Jays minus 147 favorites, projected for 5 runs. Orioles projected for 4 runs, which I'm not completely sold on. I actually really like Stroman tonight. I think he's not quite a cash arm or anything like that, but I think the last 2 starts against the Red Sox have really hindered his season-long numbers in this short sample. So when you look back before those 2 Red Sox games, he'd already had 5 DK points, 5 games above 20 DK points. I mean, he had that huge game against the Rays. His strikeout rate was solid, and he wasn't giving up that many runs. So he has a nice batting order behind him, with obviously the top 3 there in Toronto's lineup, and Tyler Wilson, who's just been getting manhandled this year. I tried to throw him in as a deep tournament play against the Yankees in his last start, and it's just he doesn't have it. When you watch him pitch, it just is a matter of time before the lineups get to him. So it's unfortunate, but I think he's out of play for now. But I really do like Stroman. I think he has 20 DK point upside and maybe 25 to 35 FanDuel point upside. So if you're getting that, pretty reasonable for his price. I mean, on DK, he's basically a punt. So I think that's fair upside. But yeah, obviously, again, not targeting Wilson against that Blue Jays lineup because someone's hitting a homer. Like I joke around about most days. Next one up, 7-10 here. We got Cardinals versus Reds. Adam Wainwright versus Brandon Finnegan. Cardinals big favorites, minus 166. I actually do like Wainwright here. Him and Stroman are very intriguing punt plays. Normally, you don't see guys that cheap who are semi-intriguing, but Wainwright's actually stabilized the last few starts. Obviously, that good start against the Rockies, and then the last two. He's given up some runs, but the strikeouts have sort of been there to outweigh and buoy that. And he's gone 6 innings or more in each of his last 4 starts. So I think he's finally starting to come around from sort of those early season struggles where he was just getting shelled. So I think that's important to note. He's at least a tournament play. And with price considered, I mean, him and Stroman, I actually trust Wainwright more than Stroman right now, which is crazy to say based on his early season starts. But with Vegas and this Reds team kind of struggling against righties this year, not really something you're worried about. They do well against bad pitching, but I think Wainwright has sort of stabilized here, and I'm not totally worried about that. Obviously, Votto and Bruce can always take the righty steep, but I'm not totally worried about that. Finnegan, he just hasn't been able to get anything going this year. I just don't see much upside in his game. It's not a good matchup for him in terms of the Cardinals' offense. You look at Diaz, Holiday, Piscotty, and those righties there. It's a decent matchup for the Cardinals, and I'm actually looking at potentially stacking at least those 3 in the middle there against Finnegan. So they're out of play for me. I'm sorry, Brandon Finnegan. We're gonna move on because, and also, I mean, having Wainwright and Stroman in that same range, at least on DK, is super solid. So I think we're moving on from that. Next one here, pretty even matchup between the Brewers and the Mets. Jimmy Nelson versus Bartolo Colon. Guys, I think the cologne has worn off. Oh baby. Now Bartolo obviously had a few great starts early on in the season, one against the Phillies, and then it seems ever since that great start against the Braves where he shut them out and had 7 strikeouts, it just hasn't really been the same since. And I mean, obviously the Braves are easy money, so it kind of makes sense now as we go throughout the season and he faces some tougher matchups that he's starting to struggle. There isn't much upside here. I'd rather just pay down for Wainwright or Stroman. You look at this Brewers lineup, they're kind of frisky. Braun, Lucroy, and Villar, it seems, every night, and then Chris Carter with the home run power. So that's not an easy lineup. That's not a cupcake, especially for Bartolo Colon. So I'm fading him until we see something else, which I'm not sure we're going to. So yeah, he's an avoid for now. Jimmy Nelson, he seems a little overpriced for what his upside is. Again, I think you can get the same upside with paying down. Obviously, he's a little safer going up against a semi-weak and beat up Mets lineup right now. No David Wright right now. But again, they still do have potential. Granderson coming around a little bit. They have Cespedes, Neil Walker, and Asdrubal Cabrera. So it's not a horrible lineup. I'm obviously not stacking Mets tonight. I think there's plenty of other opportunity for stacks, but in terms of this matchup, it's not great for Nelson. I think you're looking at a decent start here. Maybe a few earned runs, 5 or 6 strikeouts, and 5 to 7 hits. But that I don't know if that's going to get it done with his price tag, especially on this slate. I think in cash you just want to avoid this one. In tournaments he's in play, but the ceiling might not be there. So I would look other directions before you kind of head to Nelson in this game. Oh boy. Going solo, guys. I'll tell you what, my throat's getting a little dry here. There's a lot of talking. All right. Next one here. Nationals, White Sox. Nationals minus 125 favorites, but also projected for 5 runs. I'm not buying this White Sox line. Projected for 4.5 runs. Gio, they're facing a lefty. Since 2015, the White Sox have under 300 WOBA. They're like 26th or 27th in the majors in WOBA against lefties. So they've actually been decent this year, just a little over 300. But I'm not buying this. I think this is a great high-end matchup for Gio, and I think he's a potential cash arm when you really start to look at it. I mean, he's really struggled his last few outings, once against the Cardinals, which is totally understandable, and then in a crazy matchup with the Reds, he gave up a few runs. But before that, he was doing well this year, and he does have some strikeout upside against this White Sox lineup that's kind of struggled this year. Frazier's had his moments. Melky's been pretty consistent, but Jose Abreu has struggled to get it going this year. And then you kind of look beyond Abreu. If he's not the power guy, you really just have Frazier. So they aren't good against lefties historically. I'm not buying this line. And I think Gio's a great option in cash tonight, especially on FanDuel. I think he's the best option. He's the cash arm for me tonight, unless you're going to go down. But I don't think those are necessarily safe enough to be cash arms. So, and obviously I'm referring to Wainwright and Stroman. I don't see how anyone's really competing with Gio. Obviously, we have a few good arms coming up, but those guys aren't in perfect matchups. So I'm going with Gio and the historical splits here, not Vegas and what they're saying tonight. So Gio, cash arm, get him in there. If I'm wrong, then I will say I'm going to shave my head, and then I won't, and you guys will be disappointed in me. So that's how that's going to go. Next one up here, we're looking at the Twins versus the Marlins. Irvin Santana versus Tom Kohler. 5 runs for the Twins? No. I'm not buying that either, which is weird because normally I always you have to at least take Vegas into consideration, and Kohler has given up runs pretty consistently of late. Three earned runs or more in 2 of his last 3, and then he obviously had that big blow up game last time going back against the Brewers. But I mean, he hasn't really had much of a sample size to go on this year. He hasn't gotten blown up. So I don't see what Vegas is seeing here either. The Twins are bad against righties since 2015. So I think Kohler's a deep tournament play. I like paying down versus dealing with him, but if you're building 10 to 20 lineups, I think he's reasonable as sort of, I guess, contrarian against Vegas type of play. To kind of not necessarily shut them down, but to get 15 to 20 DK points. I think that's possible today. So when you really look at this Twins lineup, it's not too scary here. We obviously have Mauer, but righty on righty for Kohler against Nunez, Dozier, and Plouffe. I'm not too worried about this. And then you have, once you go deeper, I mean, these are guys that they're calling up from the minors right now. Obviously, Buxton at the end there has hit well, but he's also striking out a lot right now. He had a 3 strikeout game the other day, and he'd struck out in like 6 straight games. So there's some strikeout upside there at the end of the order, and I'm not really into this Twins lineup tonight. I'd imagine because of that run total, people might be on them in terms of ownership percentage, but I'm not really buying that. Irvin Santana. Hey, Stanton finally got off the schneid last night. 2 hits and an RBI. 2 for 5. We'll take that if you played him. Irvin Santana, I'm not touching him right now. Gotten beat up against the Rays and Royals recently and hasn't really shown much upside even before that. In terms of strikeouts, he hasn't really shown much upside this year. So I'm not worried about him. I'm not touching him. I don't think he's even really an option in deep tournaments. If I'm looking for deep tournaments, I'm going with Kohler over him. So I just like this Marlins lineup better, and I would potentially be stacking them tonight. And last on the docket here, this is the one I was referring to when talking about Gio and Cash. Indians versus Mariners. Josh Tomlin versus Nate Karns. Tomlin, obviously the pitcher for the Indians. The splits aren't looking too promising for him against this Mariners lineup tonight. I mean, when you look at 2016, the Mariners have just crushed right-handed pitching. Obviously, that's Cano. Obviously, that's Seager. Just making their mark. They're top 5 in WOBA and ISO against righties this year. I guess he could be a deep tournament play, but that's going really contrarian based on the splits, in my opinion. He hasn't had too much upside. Obviously, you like 25 or more at that price, but he's an underdog to get something like that tonight. And I think there's a high probability that the Mariners get to him at some point. They are projected for 4.5 runs. They are minus 135 favorites, so. That's a tough one for Tomlin, and on the short slate, usually you trust him and you probably go to him in most matchups, but just based on what the Mariners have done this year, I think he's a fade. Especially in cash. I don't think he's even in cash consideration. So you're looking to pay up for Gio there. Get that 700 more in there and move on. Don't think about it. And then Karns is sort of the same situation here. Indians not quite as good as the Mariners this year against right-handers, but they are in the top 10 in both WOBA and ISO. So, and WRC plus. So I'm not totally in on Karns tonight either. He doesn't have quite as much upside as Tomlin, and it's just not a great matchup. This Indians lineup has shown major upside in multiple matchups this year beyond just that Red Series. So they are kind of the real deal at this point. They are cheap tonight, so I actually think they're a potential stacking option, especially on DK. So I'm not really touching either pitcher in this game. Obviously, they're tournament plays, and obviously they're strong enough to use in tournaments as SP2s and even as a one-off in deeper lineup construction for FanDuel. But I'm not really looking at them again. Quick review here. Gio and Cash. We're looking at Wainwright here as another guy I like as a punt option. Stroman against the Orioles because righty on righty, the Orioles haven't been too strong this year, and I think Stroman has some upside and a big run total on his side. So other than that, I mean, some deep tournament plays. Jimmy Nelson is sort of a contrarian guy that I'm not really too interested in, and I think that's kind of what we're looking at here. So 3-man pitcher slate for now, and unless you want to get deeper into roster construction. So I guess that's what we're looking at here, and I hope I helped you guys, and let me know. Hopefully you win all the money. Thanks for tuning in. Make sure to check out dailyfantasycafe.com for all our cool tools and content.